Well, thank you very much. Having established with the vote that the only way is down, let me continue. When I was asked to talk in this debate, I accepted with a little bit of hesitation, and the reasons for that hesitation even have something to do with the motion, so let me outline them first of all. First of all, the motion is quite provocative, but I guess that's a standard tactic for getting people to actually turn out, so that's all right. The second reason is that when I'm normally giving lectures, I give lectures about, optics or vector calculus or astronomy or something, and in those lectures it's usually considered tactful for me to know more about what I'm talking about than the audience does. And in this one, I really don't, and the reason that I really don't has something else to do with the wording of the motion, and the wording of the motion contains the word better. And of course, given that there are 100 people in the room, there will be at least 100, if not more, definitions of the word better. So in some sense, that actually makes my job easier, because all I have to do is tell you why I like science, or why I think science is quite good for humanity in general, and me in particular, and then leave you to decide whether your definition of the word better agrees with my definition of the word better. And if my definition agrees better with the opposition, then I might vote for the opposition. Okay. So that's the start of it. So let me first of all tell you why I don't particularly think science is better. I don't know if you've ever watched Question Time, which is this sort of programme after the news once a week where the British people work themselves into paroxysms of rage. If you watch that, you usually find that there are representatives of all the main political parties, and there's usually one who's chosen as the token right-winger. You feel they've somehow been dug up from somewhere, and they have sort of problems focusing on exactly the same place as everybody else, and they usually say that we ought to privatise children or And the response of such a person to this question would be very easy, and that would be because it gets you a better job. And whether or not you think that's true, that has at least allowed me to raise a possible reason for it being better without actually implying that I agree with it. So moving right along from that one, then let me actually tell you why I think that science is interesting and better in some interesting way. Okay, well, the first way is that what I call the cartography of the weird, if you like. And those of you in the audience who had the misfortune to be my tutees last year will probably recognise this sort of thing. For example, if you go into physics in the first year, you get taught about relativity. And relativity is an absolutely profound change to the way that we understand space and time. And that is an example, I think, of one of those weird things that are absolutely impossible to describe without the language of mathematics, which are absolutely fundamental to how we perceive the world, and which could only really come about through the action of science and the scientific method, which I'll talk about a bit later. For example, if you are moving with respect to me, then I think that your clock runs slow, and you think that my clock runs slow. Okay? And that is not a contradiction. It is not some jiggery-pokery to do with there's the speed of light that goes between two events or something like that. It's entirely independent of that. It follows from an overturning of the way that we perceive time and space. So that's what I mean by the cartography of the weird. Now the point about that, what is the point about that? Yes, there's a point about that. Okay, the point about that is that if you did not have science, that would be a rather sterile paradox which people would argue about for a very long time, and they'd probably have a war about it, and people would get killed and that sort of thing. But you can see that that is something which is really fundamental. It is describable in mathematical terms, and those of you who were my tutees last year will know that I spent 2 or 3 hours banging on about it and actually doing it on a piece of paper. But trust me, for the moment, that is describable in reasonably straightforward mathematical terms. Okay, that's one reason. It allows you to have a new way of perceiving extremely fundamental things about the world. That is fun, okay? You may or may not agree with all the rest of it, but that is fun. So there. Okay, so that's number one. Second thing is that science provides, or at least the scientific method, provides a way for arranging extremely profound paradigm shifts without anybody getting killed. If you want a definition of scientific method, I think that's probably as good a one as any. The standard quote with this is one from Galileo, who said that in matters of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual. And I like to sometimes fantasize about two old men sitting in a room saying, you know, Mr. Torquemada, I think Mr. Galileo has a very good point there. Yes, Mr. Humanities. But that obviously didn't happen. But that is the important thing, that it is possible with evidence to overturn standard paradigms really very rapidly and really very completely. For example, about 10 years ago, some people who... No, was that just 1 minute? 1 minute. Some people called Perlmutter, Rees and somebody else proposed that the universe is accelerating, that there is a thing called a cosmological constant, which is rather weird, makes the universe accelerate in a rather weird way, which we don't entirely understand. They've just won the Nobel Prize. 10 years ago, I think it's fair to say that everybody working in the field absolutely hated the idea. There are all sorts of reasons why that is ugly, nasty, theoretically unpleasant, but it turned out that the evidence just accumulated to the point where everybody now believes it. It allows you to make extremely profound paradigm shifts extremely fast. And I think that is something that we need more of. So I think that we need more evidence-based politics for a start. There was somebody who was evidence-based politics, but he lost in Oxford West and Abingdon at the last election, and those of you who are psephological nerds like me will know who I'm talking about. But that is something that I think that we need more of overall in wider society, and I think scientific method. Although science is not the only subject in which that's carried out, it's one where it applies the most completely and I think the most effectively. Okay, thank you.